Man, you come right out of a comic book.
Pulp to Pixel Media.
Exploring the media multiverse of geek culture.
He meddled in things potentially.
Hello everybody, I'm Gotham Shran, creator of The Last Earth, a ray guns and rune swords comic strip I produce online. Today I'm doing another one of my process and inspiration videos, but I'm doing something a little different. Today I am working with a public domain character, the Iron Skull. Now the Iron Skull was created for Centaur Comics, which ran from about 1938 to 1939, and was created by Carl Burgos. Now for those of you who know, that is the creator of the original Human Torch, the android Human Torch, who appeared in Marvel Comics #1 in 1940. Now, the character of the Iron Skull is, of the characters that Burgos created, and some of the characters that came out of there, is I found one of the more interesting characters. The basic timeline of the character is he is a soldier from World War II whose body was so badly destroyed it had to be reconstructed into a cybernetic body, a robotic sort of android body. So he's a kind of a RoboCop or Deathlock kind of character. Now, I'm a huge fan of cyborg characters, going back as far as the $6 Million Man is one of my favorite characters, starting as a young kid, as a Gen Xer born in the 70s, that was kind of one of my first early superheroes or characters I liked. Now, the other thing that was really interesting about the character, aside from being a cyborg, is that it's in an alternate timeline where World War II lasted into the 50s, and the stories themselves are supposed to be set in an alternate 1970s. Now, these were written in 38 and 39, so this was, from the point of view of Carl Burgos at the time, that was 40 years in the future. So he was writing a science fiction story 40 years in the future. Now, I've always been interested in trying to use public domain characters to create new comic art, and I know a lot of other artists do that. And I was trying to find a way to approach this differently than just creating a new comic book in a modern style with these characters, with some modern updates, because after a point, I just feel like it's just a reskin of characters that already exist. I've read books where it's great, they've got this new vigilante, or they've rebuilt, but they're just telling a Batman story or a Superman story again, just with new skin because they don't own the rights to Batman and Superman. So I wanted to kind of, when I use public domain characters, I like to do something a little different with them, and I like to produce, rather than try to create a comic book series, I just like to create sometimes like single art pieces. So this is an example of one of those times I've done this. So running with the idea of the Iron Skull character being this sort of like RoboCop, cyborg cop character, but set in the 70s, I decided to use a lot of photo reference from movies from the 70s that I felt matched the theme. So right now on the screen, you should see that I'm starting to draw what are characters with the military sort of part, the backstory and the base of this piece. In particular, I'm using images from Johnny Get Your Gun, which for me was I came across from the very famous, very well-known Metallica video, and where it was heavily used within that video. And as a kid, again, 80s kid, that's something that kind of came to me. So in that, though, he is a soldier who is so badly destroyed, his body, that he's effectively like trapped in a body that can't talk and has no limbs and can't speak and stuff. And so I imagined, well, what if that, using those images as influence and then building him up into other characters. Now, I decided to use, since it's set in the 70s again, to use references from movies from the 70s. So I ended up using references such as THX 1138, something I'd recently seen and had never seen before, and being George Lucas's first movie, and was blown away. I absolutely loved it. I can definitely tell where, coming out of film school, how anyone who knew or had seen some of his work must really feel like, this George Lucas has got something going on. And he did. He gave us Star Wars, which I don't think I have to stress the cultural impact that has had on our lives as Americans and consumers of pop culture. But I also did a little stuff with Westworld. You can see a little Yul Brynner face there. And I even included some Dirty Harry imagery, because as written, the character of Iron Skull is that kind of like, Dirty Harry-ish, sort of almost like borderline vigilante, super cop sort of character. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm kind of almost imagining this piece as if it were a movie poster for the Iron Skull movie if it were made in the 70s. And so I'm kind of imagining this sort of almost like a cyborg road warrior, either wandering the wastelands of the destroyed America. Because again, as part of the backstory, he is a veteran effectively of World War II, but World War II didn't end in the 40s. It went well into the 50s, and the war made it to the shores of the United States and actually devastated parts of the United States. A lot of his story is set in Chicago at first and then New York, but in the Chicago that was being rebuilt after that war. Eventually, though, after the actual World War II, during World War II, when America joined that, Iron Skull had a real dramatic shift from this sort of futuristic cyborg story to a bog standard sort of Superman clone, even right down to a cape and emblem on his chest, which was very uninspired at that point, but it was what everyone was chasing. After 1938, everyone was chasing the Superman, Batman bandwagon at that point. But prior to that, I think there was a really strong story there. Now, I have considered maybe doing my own version of it or coming up with it, but again, I've seen a lot of people in the indie space who are trying to kind of make a name for themselves and using public domain characters. And at no point am I going to put hate on that. I like it, but I just feel it's been done enough that I don't really have anything necessarily important to say. But I do have stuff I feel I can draw, and I do have a visual I can add to it. And so hopefully this piece is that. Now, I've done actually a few pieces like this where I've used a reference photo, which I effectively lightbox on or collage together into creating these sort of faux poster, movie poster style pieces. I have another one that I did some time ago. Unfortunately, I don't have a time-lapse video of it, which is a 70s Heroes for Hire with recast with actors from the 70s with references to Carl Weathers and David Carradine and Telly Savalas and Blackula and Bolo Young and Pam Grier and I think Lady Snowblood. So there's a lot of going on in there, which in my sort of fan casting and then redrawing them. I have a few other pieces I'm working on as well, and I've done actually this technique to create a couple of fake album covers as well for sort of fictitious bands, but looking like and based off of existing artists. So here again is me doing that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you kind of enjoyed this little thing and kind of peek at my behind the scenes in it. And if you are interested, I will be selling this on my Redbubble store. Check the show notes for a link. Thanks again for joining me on my art process journey as I create my comic strip, The Last Earth. You can follow me on the web at www.pulp2pixel.com and on Instagram and Twitter at pulp2pixel. See the show description for links to my LinkTree, my merch store, and donation site. See you next time when we return to the distant future of The Last Earth.